Is that your own?
The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
So today she's 3, your daughter?
Yeah, she turned 3 yesterday, actually.
What's her name?
Isabella. We call her Isa.
Isa, what a beautiful name. Man, they grow up way too fast.
Yeah, way too fast. 3 years like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lightning in a bottle sometimes. Hard to bottle that lightning. But anyway, we're really glad to have you with us. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to the Bliss Business Podcast, where we explore purpose-driven leadership, innovation, and impactful change. I'm Tulio Sergusa, joined by my co-host Mike Liskey. Today's topic is one that every forward-thinking leader must consider: balancing profit and social responsibility. In fact, businesses today face growing pressure to not only achieve financial success, but to contribute positively to society. The question is, how do you strike that balance? Mike, why don't you please introduce our guests and tell us more about what we'll be diving into today?
Yeah. Excited to, Tulio. Thanks for that. And then welcome as well to our followers today and joining us live as well. So joining us today is Brandon Powell. You might know him as the CEO of HatchWorks AI, which is a leading software development company that prides itself on delivering innovative solutions. And you'll want to note this, while fostering a strong commitment to social impact, which we know is an important topic to our followers. Now, under Brandon's leadership, HatchWorks AI has become a shining example of how businesses can integrate both that purpose and profit. Brandon's vision emphasizes the importance of aligning financial goals with social responsibility, which has allowed the company, honestly, to create value, not just, for stakeholders, but clients, employees, and the communities alike. So, Brandon, we're super excited to have you here today to talk about this with us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So, Brandon, maybe to just kick things off a little bit, share with us maybe a little bit around your journey. What led you to HatchWorks, and then maybe we can get into after that. Talking a little bit about that balance between profit and social impact.
Yeah, so I started HatchWorks probably it's been just over 8 years ago now, and for me, I spent most of my career in consulting, doing a lot of outsourcing, software development, product development, and eventually I ran product for Cricket Wireless, which is about a $10 billion wireless company, and so I got a lot of experience, kind of building and launching products, and HatchWorks really was kind of the culmination of my career between services and building products. And I started the business 8 years ago, bootstrapped it, really just focused like we are today on building, digital products for customers. And we started very local. So just in Atlanta, where I'm from, and then we opened up in Chicago, and then we opened in Dallas. And from there, we expanded into Latin America. So I had a lot of outsource offshore experience, and we decided to go very early into nearshore. And so added in delivery centers in Colombia and Costa Rica and spent a lot of time down there. And 2 years ago, we probably made our biggest pivot, which is we went all in on AI. And that's where we are today. So you've got a company that we focus on helping companies adopt and scale AI within their organization. And typically that's some sort of digital product or data engineering that we do, and we're helping them scale those businesses with AI. And it's been a wild ride the last 2 years since we really went all in, but it's been a really exciting one.
Yeah, man, to say the least, right? You got to be a busy man. So just follow up on that in terms of the idea of trying to balance that profit with social impact, and that essentially being, I think, also we could say, cornerstone of maybe your leadership style. How do you do that? How do you go about making sure that you're thinking about both?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it for me as a leader, right? Everyone has a superpower that they're really good at, and I obviously have a lot of blind spots. And I've spent a lot of time over the years between CEO coaching and life coach and YPO and all these pieces of really getting comfortable with where are my where are my strengths, and then more importantly, understanding, where my weaknesses are. And one of my strengths is definitely around empathy, and believing that purpose is really, really important to any business. And I've really leaned into that. Like when I started HatchWorks, like where we are today, very focused on, making sure that not only we're doing amazing things for our customers, but we're also doing it for the community. And so we launched a nonprofit called Hatch Futures, which is our giving arm of HatchWorks. And we'll dig into that in a second. But that purpose piece is really important. And I think for me, that was instilled really just at a young age. I was raised by a single mom. I started working when I was 12 years old, and I started my first business when I was 14. And so a lot of those pieces, and it was out of necessity. And so I kind of knew, like, I didn't grow up super poor, but it also definitely weren't rich. And so I saw the fact that entrepreneurship, and more importantly, that businesses, even at a young age, they could provide not only for individuals, but also in the community. And so that, for me, I think it was born at just that young age. And so as I've started companies as an adult, including HatchWorks, I knew that I really, some people will call it like a double bottom line or a double thing. For me, it's about having a purpose that's got two different meanings to it. One for what you do for your customers or your clients, and the other one, what do you do for your community? What that's given so much to you as a person. So very important to me.
Got it.
It's been said that balancing. It's been said that balancing profits and doing good is like walking a tightrope. It's very challenging. How do you go about balancing that? With the push towards making AI successful and as an adoptive product and services for your business. I also understand, I think you've gotten some investment, so you've got a lot of pressure to do that. And then of course, balancing doing good. How do you balance that out?
Yeah, I'm going to give you a really honest answer that most people probably wouldn't go to. And I'll say I struggled with it, that my heart was too big for the growth we were doing, meaning we were growing at 30, 45%, literally, and had years with no profit. No profit. That doesn't look good, even with the growth. We're in the services business. And so that was as soon as 3 years ago. And about 2 years ago is when I started. I hired a CEO coach. I got into, eventually an investor last year, which changed the game. But I tended to lean more towards the kind of the philanthropy side and not enough focus on profitability. So, you hear a lot of people come from the other side, right? Where it's like, they're so focused on profitability. It is a tough balance. And I don't think there's anyone that does this that will tell you it's easy. All of us have a lean. And for me, I learned a lot about myself around boundaries and things that I wasn't doing, functions that we didn't need. And when you're growing at 30, 45% and you're just it's just easy to keep spending versus having that. And some of the spending was on giving back, on doing things in the community. And I wouldn't say I had good balance, and the balance was the wrong way. And so now what I've tried to do is set guardrails on both sides, where we have the Hatch Futures. We have a very big purpose with AI around teaching 1,000 educators. That's our BHAG by 2030, 1,000 educators in the poorest communities in Atlanta, Chicago, Dallas, Colombia, Costa Rica, because we believe that AI is going to change those poverty cycles. I had all that before, but I didn't have as much weight on the profitability. And so we've got a big goal around profitability this year. So we have this BHAG around education, but then we've got a really big BHAG around profitability. So not worried just about revenue growth, but really focused on profitability. And that's probably where I've grown the most over the last year. Like last year was tough in the services business. It was tough for all of us. And so that kind of also forced me to make some hard decisions about the business, some hard decisions around understanding in very detail around gross margin, stuff like that. And so I feel today that I'm the most balanced that I've been in this 8-year journey, because I tended to the growth was going. And so when the growth was going, I was also, kind of spending and trying to give back. And I don't feel like I had great balance until things got really real last year for a lot of us that were in the services business.
I really appreciate your powerful vulnerability, Brandon. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, I think it's important, right? I mean, a lot of people talk about double bottom line and all this stuff. And my investor, he founded a B Corp that scaled like crazy. He he was one of the first B Corps ever in the services space. And so he had really, and I've learned a lot, but he is so balanced around like understanding his gross margin, what he has to do. And then he has that giving back. And so he's really also helped me balance that for HatchWorks, because he had the same heart, the same pull between how do I make my community better, and then how do I grow a really profitable scaling business. And so that's been also really helpful for me.
Wow. Yeah. So Brandon, you mentioned the double bottom. I'm not sure if maybe you've heard, or maybe our listeners have heard of the triple bottom. This was a framework that was developed actually by John Elkington. And similar to your thought, it's people, planet, and profits. And those companies that I believe have used it have even found that when it comes to employee engagement, getting that people component in there, they tend to be more successful because those employees stick around longer. There's more employee engagement. So I'm curious if we could talk maybe a little bit more about either other frameworks that you have or other guiding principles, maybe that you use to kind of keep a line, right, between the social goals and the financial goals.
Yeah, so I think part of it starts with purpose. Like for us at HatchWorks AI, we exist to merge artificial and human intelligence in an inclusive, responsible way for all, right? So notice we weren't just talking about our customers. We weren't just talking about our community. We were talking about everyone. And what we try to do though, is when our people, what I've learned over the years, I've been in this space for like 20 something years, more so than ever in my career, people want to work for more than just a company. They want to have a purpose, and they want it to be more, in our case, than just building AI applications. They want to have something else. And so what we've been able to do is almost have a dual purpose, where it's like, yeah, we're building applications with AI, but we're also teaching AI to the next generation of people that are going to end the poverty cycles. And so I found that, like, I don't know about, double bottom line, triple. I've heard the triple bottom line thing because that's what my investor had at his company. Had the people was part of the 3 Ps. But for me, I think it starts higher at the purpose piece, right? So if everything rolls down to your bottom line, I think a purpose in a company is so important. And if you can make it bigger than themselves, that is where I think you get maximum impact. And for us, we've seen that in like Latin America specifically, their stories are incredible. I'm not saying we don't have those in the US, but some of these stories around, I learned English on YouTube. I'm the first person in my entire city, like little town, to go to college. There's some crazy stories there. And so when you start to bring those things together between the culture we have in the US, Latin America, and you give them this purpose, that's really a dual purpose. It's not a purpose that's just for like clients and our business and our growth. So
yeah, I love that. It is, the gotta be the umbrella of almost everything. We got to write a book now about the 4 Ps, right? Purpose, people, planet, and profit. Yeah. For sure. But I have to totally agree with you. I mean, so I've got a 19-year-old and a 17-year-old, and I really feel like this generation, whether it's even in the tools that they use or the things that they're doing, they really feel like companies need to have, make like a social impact, or like have the environment in mind. It's something that they just totally expect. Companies need to stand for something if they're going to, support them, really.
It's not even just this generation. I mean, the previous ones, we just were a little bit more self-sacrificing in those regards, right? So, which is not necessarily good, because half the time you become a martyr. But I mean, it's people care about 4 things. They want to belong to something greater than themselves. They want meaning behind what they're doing. They want to be able to make an impact, and they want the opportunity to to grow. So if companies understand that, not all that flows from purpose. If companies understand that and align everything that they're doing around these 4 tenets, then you have highly engaged cultures, very profitable cultures. But but it's a difficult thing to balance, especially when the pressures come in from investors and so on. But oddly enough, the stats and the studies show that those who practice empathy across all these spectrums tend to be more profitable. So it's actually a strategic business model that many companies are still not adopting because of fear, or they think, well, this is what's worked in the past. But it's more profitable to run an empathetic business. The data's there. So we're just hoping more companies begin to adopt it and go in that direction for sure.
Yeah. I mean, to give you a proof point to your point right there, Tulio. So we all know Unilever, right, is just this massive organization made up of a lot of different brands, and they did a study, within Unilever, Dove and seventh generation, because we know Dove from like its real beauty campaigns and how it's really pivoted in terms of its approach to its audience. They found that those two brands, Dove and seventh generation, are growing 50% faster than the rest of the Unilever portfolio. Wow. So absolutely, to your point is, I think those two brands have found their purpose, and people love them and they support them.
That doesn't surprise. I mean, for us, right? I'm in the people business, one way or the other. It's just the type of people are very technical and engineers and stuff. But I'm in the tightest, probably the hottest talent segment in the world, which is AI ML engineers, right? And data engineers. And so I didn't do it on purpose, but literally like having a purpose when it's so competitive, and like in finding people where, it's not just about the money, it's about working on something beyond yourself. It's really important. Like for us, our retention is 99% retention in our space is very uncommon, but I absolutely think it's tied to that. It's not like we pay the most, and it's like we're not the biggest, but having something outside yourself to work on, I think for a lot of businesses can really help that retention and like you said, the growth. That's amazing. I'll have to look that up. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And now you're actually, Brandon, making me think a little bit about our development team on AI CMO. Because when they first, came into this project, they didn't know anything about marketing, right? And marketing and brand is, supposed to be the keeper, right? In a way of purpose, and making sure that internally and externally you're aligning, with your brand and with your purpose. But I've got to go back and ask them, now that as they've gone through this project with us and they've understand really the intention behind AI CMO, which is, about, really trying to elevate, brands, to be distinct and find, what their unique value is. If they've kind of, latched on to that mission. So that's going to make for an interesting conversation with our development team for sure. So I want to switch over a little bit to social entrepreneurship. Brandon, we know, it can be a really powerful force within a community. So I'm curious, how do you define, social entrepreneurship? And then as far as the role that it's going to play in the business landscape, how do you see that today, or maybe how do you see it in the future?
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, like from a social entrepreneurship perspective, I think that, like I told you before, it was like, I feel like it's an obligation that I owe it. I feel obligated because as an entrepreneur, I think I have opportunities to make difference in a lot of people's lives that I maybe wouldn't have without it. And so, example, I left AT&T and I was on a really good path. AT&T owned Cricket. I was very young for running that big of a product team, but social entrepreneurship is probably the number one reason I left, because I was like, I can keep working here and keep getting a bigger paycheck, probably retire probably before now. Or I can go and try to make an impact. That's more than just working at it. I mean, nothing wrong with that company. It's a great company, but how can I go and do something bigger than myself? And when I was at Harvard Business School, I met a lot of people that made me think bigger, especially socially, like people that were starting lighting companies for Africa so that people that had no electricity had light. And it started to really it impacted me in a way where it was more than just going and starting another services business. It was like, how do I start one that's socially responsible? And I had talked to some people, who only worked with certain types of companies, for example, and that was how they did their social responsibility. And so when I started HatchWorks, it was one of the main reasons I started it was the opportunity to actually make a difference in the community. And I got to control that. I got to decide whether we made it versus being in a big company. I don't have any say really over how we give back and how we do that. And the other piece to it is I believe in social entrepreneur that you owe something to the community that helped give you what you got, right? I wouldn't have a company without our customers, without our people, without our employees, right? And so how do we give back to what they live in? And I just feel like to me, it's just kind of like built in my DNA. I definitely think it comes from childhood though.
So interested to get your feedback or perhaps even advice for leaders who might be watching who are sitting on the fence about being socially responsible, especially venture funded companies. They're under so much pressure. It's not a conversation that's had at the board table, for example, right? But is that a mistake in your opinion? What advice would you give leaders to try to balance this and really go down that path and the impact it could have on their business? You've talked about it a little bit, having almost less than a 1% attrition rate. That's incredible. I mean, there's definitely something to be said about that. So what advice would you give a CEO or a board that's kind of sitting on the fence about playing in a social responsible way?
Yes, I think one of the things they need to look at is like this generation, a lot of the, I guess you call it Gen Z. And if you're going to keep that company and scale that company, you're going to have more than retention problems if you don't have some purpose broader than the company. So yes, retention is a thing. I also think people at times take less money to work in a company that they believe in and have purpose. So that obviously gets to the bottom line. If you're hiring people and not paying over market because you're a great place to work, then there's companies that almost have to overpay in the market because no one wants to work there, but they take the money. And so I think that there's a lot of reasons around your people to do it. But here's the other piece that I saw this at a young age. And I thought it was really interesting. Have y'all ever watched like Chick-fil-A and the way they market cause marketing? Okay. Like cause marketing. They don't do coupons. They don't do anything, but they always give back and they promote giving back and what they're doing. And so I took a little bit of that when I launched HatchWorks. I'm like, companies want to do business with companies just like people go to Chick-fil-A, not only for the product, but also because it makes them feel good about what they're doing. And so I do think it can have an impact, especially if you're a PE or investment company and you got a bunch and it's a commoditized service. Like it's a differentiator, I think, in terms of like, do I like doing business with HatchWorks because I know that they are socially responsible and they do more, or do I want to do business with another company that doesn't do anything, to give back or have any other purpose other than themselves? And so I think that I think it's a card that's played. I wouldn't say it's like the differentiating factor, but I think that it can help you on the revenue side. I think it can help you on the marketing side. And I don't market things that we do with Hatch Futures because I want someone to say, "Oh, good job, HatchWorks." I do it because I want to bring visibility to the fact that AI can end poverty cycles by getting people interested in it. So I don't do it for those reasons, but I do think that there's secondary impacts that people see that, oh, well, HatchWorks is like really cool about giving back to people and trying to help them. I want to work for them, or I want to help them grow their business or put them in touch with people that might need their services.
Well, oddly enough, for those who are really focused only on the bottom line and shareholder value, doing those things, there are stats and data that show that those companies are more profitable, like by 10x. So it's strategic. We got a question from the audience. It's a really great question. Martha on YouTube. How do you think social responsibility will evolve over the next 5 to 10 years? And obviously AI is going to play a big role in this. What are your thoughts on that, Brandon?
I think it goes back to what I said about Gen Z and like the next, like I think more than ever. And you mentioned, I think a 17 and a 19-year-old. So like, as you think about them, right now in our business, it's like we have all levels, right? From 20-year experience down to, associates or interns. But what I'm seeing in that range is down in the associate or the young, is like they want something else. They want something besides coming and getting that paycheck. And so if you fast forward 5 to 10 years, that Gen Z is becoming your mid and your senior level employees. And now you also have AI. What I'm seeing is the younger generation is very comfortable working alongside bots, working alongside agents. Like I'm seeing a lot more adaptability there. And therefore, I think the social responsibility actually becomes a very important part of your talent strategy as you start to grow the business. Because I'm seeing, I mean, look, I've been around this for a while now, 20 plus years experience. I'm seeing just a difference in this latest generation that's coming out of into the workforce that I don't think it's going to change. I think it's only going to get bigger as that generation kind of moves up through the workforce ranks.
Yeah.
I think us Gen Xers are a little bit insecure in that area. So there's a lot of learning from the younger generation.
Yeah. Time to be an early adopter or get on it fast if you can, right? Don't be afraid of the technology. Yeah, I would totally agree with you. Going back to one of your previous points too, Brandon, a CEO that many of us know really well, Larry Fink, obviously is the head at BlackRock, a really large investment, asset management firm. All the way back in 2018, and one of his investor letters during his quarterly earnings updates, he basically said, and quote, without a sense of purpose, no company, either public or private, can achieve its full potential. And I think we're leaving opportunity on the table by missing out on what that purpose is. So I would totally agree with you. I was curious, maybe in one of your points, you started to make mention of companies wanting to do business with other companies. So I was kind of curious, talking about partnerships or collaborations and sort of their importance. Like, what role then do you see that a partnership or collaboration will play with social impact?
So, I mean, I think for us, like we're trying to, like we have partners, we have channel partners that we work with. And I think looking at channel partners and having, kind of like-minded, views of like how social responsibility fits into it. Like one of our channel partners is CEO Coaching International. I'm a client of theirs and we're a strategic partner of theirs. And they are, they're focused on helping, people like me, CEOs, be successful and grow their businesses so that they have the resources to give back into the communities and grow the business. And so I purposely chose to kind of partner with them because I knew that they were really trying to get CEOs to a point where they can, be socially responsible, also have a great business, profitability. And so I felt like I could have a big impact on them and their 500 customers. So that was a channel partnership that, we chose based off of that. And I would say the other thing, and this is what we chose to do with Hatch Futures, is we chose to go find schools. This is back to the giving part, but it ties into us. We chose to go find schools in low income and school districts that we could go, and they said, our teachers don't know anything about AI. And we have a lot of low income, high risk kids that if they could, if you guys could help us learn AI, we could then share some of that with the kids. And so we chose a channel around specific schools that we knew was an area that we could make impact. So I do think thinking about your channels and who you choose to do business with, I think is very important to make sure that you see eye to eye in terms of what social responsibility could mean.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's got to be like a really good collaboration, a partnership. It's like a marriage in a way, right? You want to be working together versus against each other or in different directions. So yeah, without a doubt. So then, Brandon, maybe turning our attention now more towards some of the challenges, but then also the opportunities for a purpose-driven organization. So as you kind of look ahead and you see the trends and some of the opportunities for businesses out there, maybe not just yours, but businesses in general, that are committed to profit and purpose. Like, what are some of those trends? What are some of the opportunities do you see with companies that are trying to balance purpose and profit?
Oh, I mean, it's definitely competing priorities, right? And so, for us, what we did this year is we create these BHAGs, right? These audacious goals, and we did, we have 3 of them. We typically try to have 3, not more than 4. So this year we have a revenue one, EBITDA, right, our profitability, and then a giving back one, which is the number of teachers that we train on AI. And so I think one of the ways to do it, right, is include it as part of your priorities. That's the hardest thing to do. Do I include the teacher one, or do I do some kind of, the number of people I hire, some other business metric? Okay. But it's important enough to me that I want one of those in my 3 goals for the year. One of them is related to giving back. And growing that piece. But we're lucky because what we do teaching ties into what we do for customers, right? From an AI perspective. So those things it's not like on one side we're going and working, doing something with food, and on the other side we're doing something with AI. They're very converged on that. But it is so hard with the competing priorities. The other piece is when money's tight and you have an investor and you're having to explain okay, why are we only making 10% on the bottom line when it could be 15 or 12, right? You got to really be able to quantify the impact of what you're doing. And so I try to look at that in retention, customers that maybe are doing business with us because they like our purpose, stuff like that, to try to make it more real around versus just like, oh, well, we did this many volunteer hours, or we did this. You got to try to tie it back to what's the return on that investment that you're making.
That makes a lot of sense, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't have even had that revenue, on the books. That makes a lot of sense. And it sounded like part of what you were describing there too is I love this thought of the art of the win-win-win. We've all heard of like a win-win situation, right? It's good for you, it's good for them, but there's really always a third, or in some cases even a fourth party that's involved, right? And I've found that in most cases, whether it's a project or a business or, some decision that needs to be made, is if you can think of, the art of the win-win-win. Is it for yourself? Is it for, your customer? And then, another third party. And if they, benefit all of them, a lot of time it'll lead to the best, decision, or that, ends up being the right decision.
Yeah. So Brandon, we're coming up on wrap-up time. This has been a really inspiring conversation. Really admire your commitment to balancing growing a high-tech company and giving back to the community, and even your vulnerability and how challenging that's been to find that balance, and the help and aid you've received from advisors and mentors. Speaks volumes of your commitment to both the business as well as your responsibilities to the greater good. So before we wrap up, we always like to ask a question of our guests. And do you think love belongs in business? We're not talking about romantic love. We're talking about love amongst friends, amongst family. Do you think that there's room for that in business, and why?
Yeah. But I would say for me, like when I started my business, this business 8 years ago, like it was my baby. And so you would say, well, that's another way of saying I love this, because I'm not gonna, let anything happen to it. And over the years, it's not that I've become less in love with it. It's that I've become more focused on what it can help me do, both from an impact and from, so I love having a business and I love what we can do. But I would say that I've been able to start to one step away from it. So one step away, like my identity is not all wrapped in it and all this other stuff. It's more about being able to see the catalyst for what it can be. So without this business, like I'm not able to go and launch Hatch Futures. I'm not able to go. I've got another business called Nearshore Works, where we're creating all these jobs in Latin America that are being outsourced. And so like business has given me an opportunity to make social impact that I never would have. So yes, I love having a business. I would say that I'm not in love with my specific business, but I'm in love with having a business. I love having the impact. I love leading people. Love it. It's such an opportunity. It's such a blessing to be able to wake up and be able to run a business with a couple hundred people across these different countries, and the culture piece of it. It's not easy, and I'm not going to act like it is. It's not. But I love having the opportunity that I've been blessed with to be able to run this business the way it is right now.
Nice. When I was asked that question, I said, business is an expression of love. because you're trying to do something that's either going to change or disrupt the status quo or create opportunities. And that's got to be motivated by something other than just trying to make profit, at least for the long haul. Usually it's motivated by something more, a little deeper, like love. So, Brandon, it's amazing to have had you here. Where can people learn about you?
Yeah. So, I mean, they can shoot me an email at brandon@hatchworks.com. I'm also on LinkedIn at Brandon Christopher Powell. Those are about the only two things I have time for right now. So either one of those work just fine.
Very true. Very, very true. But yeah, Brandon, thank you so much. You know, it was, you know, just an awesome show, learning from you and, you know, seeing a real leader out there, leading his organization in the way that you do, and that, you know, the impact that you're making. Really appreciate, you know, learning about your journey, and then, you know, the things that you do, you know, to be able to balance, you know, profit and social responsibility, and, you know, even that, you know, that love that we have, where we can go, you know, even perhaps a little bit too overboard at times, right? So really appreciate that. And no doubt your work, you know, at HatchWorks is a powerful example for our audience and for businesses today of what is really possible when a business leads with purpose. So thank you so much, Brandon. It was great having you on the show today.
And thank you guys for having me, and thank you for putting a light on the opportunities that we have as entrepreneurs to give back. So thank you guys.
Absolutely. To our listener, you can find all the shows and our blogs at theblisspodcast.com. Don't forget to subscribe, like our shows. There are 2 live shows we do every week with guests like Brandon, one on Tuesday and the other one is on Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific. And we also have our Wednesday morning Scaling with Purpose series. Check that out if you have an opportunity. Thanks for joining us. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone. And we'll see you again the next time on the Bliss Business Podcast.